Did you have sex with him when he came over?
Yes.
What was he asking?
Just, what was going on?
Pamela Walhouse ruled the airwaves at 89.7 FM The Voice. Known as the Mistress of Metal, she cranked out the biggest metal hits of the early 80s. From Iron Maiden to Metallica, Pam had every headbanger in town tuning in. As she juggled her communications degree with her DJ duties, the winter break of 1986 offered a much-needed pause. She was heading back home to spend the holidays with her family and friends in New Hampshire. There, she met Greg Smart at a party. With his long hair and guitar skills, Greg reminded her of the hot guys from the metal bands she loved. Pam and Greg hit it off right away. It was clear they had something special. Greg, totally into Pam's love for all things metal, didn't waste any time and moved in with her while she was wrapping up college in Florida. They were pretty much inseparable after that. Fast forward 2 years, and they're saying I do, then setting up their own place in Derry, Pam's hometown in New Hampshire. After Pam graduated with her communications degree, she landed a job at a local high school as the head of media services. Meanwhile, Greg found work as an insurance salesman. Their combined efforts allowed them to turn the condo into a place that felt like home. They picked out nice things and decorated with care. To complete their little family, they welcomed a Shih Tzu puppy they named Halen, a nod to the legendary band Van Halen. Pamela Smart wasn't your typical teacher. At only 22, she was young and cool, and the students loved her for it. Cecilia Pierce, a 15-year-old with dreams of journalism, quickly bonded with Pam. Soon enough, she found herself confiding in Pam. Boy troubles, career aspirations, nothing was off limits. After school, she'd go over to Pam's place, where they'd chat over fajitas. Greg was always at work, Pam would tell her, and she was left alone and lonely. She liked being friends with Cecilia, who appreciated being treated as an equal and not like a little kid. The boys at the school couldn't help but notice Pam as well. She had that glam rock look, the kind you'd see in MTV music videos. One of these boys, 15-year-old Billy Flynn, declared to his friends that he was in love the moment he laid eyes on her. Maybe it was the youthful admiration, Greg's new corporate look, or just plain boredom, but Pam basked in the attention. And one day after school, she'd be the one to cross a line she had always flirted with. She had invited Billy over for a movie, a gesture that crossed the boundaries of teacher and student. She had chosen 9.5 Weeks, a film notorious for pushing the limits, much like her daring invitation to Billy. At one point, Pam left the room briefly, and when she came back, she was dressed in sexy lingerie. Billy was speechless as she led him into her bedroom. She started dancing around him like Kim Basinger did to Mickey Rourke in the movie. He couldn't believe his first time was going to be with Pam. It was just like the Van Halen song Hot for Teacher, a fantasy come true. They spent more and more time together, continuing to meet for intimate encounters at any opportunity. They would even sneak into her office at the school. Pam took photos of herself in a bikini, and Billy kept copies of those photos in his wallet. The more time Billy spent with Pam, the deeper his infatuation grew. Pam confided in Billy about Greg's constant infidelity and physical abuse. She expressed her desperate wish for him to just disappear. She said she felt trapped, unable to divorce Greg because he would take the house and her beloved dog, leaving her with nothing. Pam's words to Billy were like striking a match near a trail of gasoline, setting off a chain reaction that would lead to an explosive outcome. Pam's manipulation of Billy escalated as she exploited his infatuation. She threatened to leave him if he couldn't help her get rid of Greg, playing on his fear of losing her. She would tell him, "If you loved me, you'd do this." Billy, desperate to keep Pam by his side, fell deeper into her web of deceit. Billy involved his friends Patrick, Vance, and Raymond in the plot. Pam laid out her plan. It would look like a robbery. She promised each of them $500 for their help, plus they could take any electronics and valuables from the house. After all, Greg's life insurance would allow her to replace that stuff. Raymond and Vance would drive, and Billy and Patrick would break in, kill Greg, and make it look like a robbery. Vance said his dad had a gun they could use. Pam said she'd prefer that to a knife so that the blood wouldn't stain the floor or the furniture. She had one thing that was non-negotiable, though. She told them to make sure the dog was locked away so that her baby didn't get traumatized by seeing Greg get murdered. Around 10 p.m. on May 1st, 1990, the officer pulled up to a building in Summerhill condominiums for an emergency call. He found Pam sitting on the concrete steps next to Unit 4E, sobbing. She yelled hysterically, "He's in there!" When the officer entered the apartment, he saw Greg lying face down on the floor. Thinking he could start CPR, he turned him over, only to find the fatal bullet wound to Greg's head. In the days following the tragedy, the community gathered around Pam, offering condolences and support to the young widow, whose life was shattered only 6 days before her first wedding anniversary. Yet as the investigation unfolded, the detectives felt a sense of unease. Pam's behavior post-tragedy was unsettling. She disposed of Greg's belongings within days, as if eager to erase his presence. Her demeanor, too composed for someone who had been through such a traumatic event, raised suspicions. The nature of the crime, marked by the precise and fatal shot, hinted at something more sinister than a mere burglary gone bad. Adding to the detective's suspicions was Pam's interaction with the media. She divulged details of the crime scene that were meant to be confidential, information only the perpetrator would know. This reckless sharing of information was a red flag for the investigators, suggesting that Pam might be more involved in the crime than she let on, but they had no proof, only intuition.
And that's kind of, when it really hit me that he won't ever come back.
Rumors of the crime began to spread through the halls of the school, and Cecilia's name surfaced. Known to have visited Pam's home multiple times in the weeks leading up to the incident, she became a person of interest to the police. They hoped she might shed some light on anything peculiar that she'd observed, any hint that could unravel the mystery. Meanwhile, the boys couldn't resist the urge to boast. The rumors of their involvement spread like wildfire. One student, sensing the gravity of the situation, went to Vance's father. Upon inspection, he discovered his weapon was not in the pristine condition he had left it in. It was a detail he could not ignore. With a heavy heart, he turned the gun over to the authorities, bracing himself for the possibility that his worst fears might be confirmed. This might be the murder weapon. The boys were quickly rounded up for questioning by the police. They didn't hold back, confessing their parts in the crime right away. They all pointed the finger at Pam, saying she was the one who planned everything. But the police needed solid proof to charge Pam. That's when Cecilia stepped in, agreeing to wear a hidden microphone. The cops told her exactly what to say to get Pam to slip up. And sure enough, Pam made some careless comments. She told Cecilia that no one would ever take the word of some teenagers over hers. She even tried to scare Cecilia, saying that if she told the truth, she'd be in trouble for being an accessory after the fact. Even with the threat of being caught, Pam didn't stop trying to manipulate people. Now under arrest, Pam found herself facing serious charges of conspiracy, accessory to first-degree murder, and witness tampering. The trial, televised and sensationalized, had the nation gripped. It was like a real-life soap opera, with Pam at the center, dubbed the Ice Princess by the media. Her every move, even her fashion choices for court, were dissected and discussed, adding to the scandalous allure of the proceedings. People were captivated by the twists and turns of the case, eagerly awaiting each day's development as if tuning in for the latest episode of a gripping drama. Pam maintained her innocence, claiming she was set up. She admitted to having an affair with Billy, stating he had threatened to harm himself if she left him to reconcile with her husband Greg. She painted Billy as a delusional youth, lost in his own fantasies. She said she had nothing to do with the murder and had no knowledge of it beforehand. Faced with the possibility of life in prison without parole, Billy chose to strike a deal. In exchange for reduced sentences of 18 to 28 years, he and his friends agreed to testify against Pam. The recordings from Cecilia were played, each word a nail in the coffin of Pam's defense. Billy, overcome with emotion, took the stand. Through tears, he narrated the sequence of events that led to that fateful day. The jury was swayed. In the end, Pam was convicted on all counts.
On case number 9S1370, which charges a defendant with the crime of conspiracy to commit murder, how say you, is the defendant guilty or not guilty of the offense charged?
Guilty.
So say you all.
Billy and Patrick received sentences for second-degree murder. Vance was found guilty of being an accomplice, and Raymond, the one who stayed in the car, was convicted of conspiracy and attempted burglary. Pam's attempts to appeal centered around the argument that the intense media attention tainted her trial. However, the court meticulously reviewed all aspects of the case. While some media pieces were indeed hostile and accusatory, the majority of the material submitted consisted of straightforward, unemotional factual accounts of events and the progress of investigations. The court also pointed out that Pam herself had contributed to the media frenzy by granting interviews and making statements. Her appeal was denied. The harsh realities of prison life have taken their toll on Pam. She was severely beaten, suffering a broken nose and eye socket. She was moved from her initial prison location in New Hampshire to another facility outside the state. Conversely, she also holds 2 masters and a doctorate and dedicates her time tutoring fellow inmates, an accomplishment that stands in stark contrast to her surroundings. She claims that her newfound connection to God helps her overcome the daily struggles she faces, allowing her to maintain a positive outlook despite the odds. She even became an ordained minister, running sermons for a prison population that has nicknamed her Tinkerbell. For over 3 decades, Pam has maintained her claim of innocence. She insists that she was not the mastermind behind her husband's murder. However, Greg's family remains unconvinced, their belief in Pam's guilt unwavering. Despite her efforts over the years, Pam has faced numerous denials in her quest for a reduced sentence, with the legal system standing firm. She continues to serve a life sentence without the chance of parole. Her sentence is now final, as all of her appeals, both at the state and federal levels, have been rejected. As of 2015, Billy Flynn and all of his accomplices have been granted parole. What are your opinions about everyone being out on parole while Pam remains behind bars? Do her accomplishments and newfound faith hint at rehabilitation? Or does her refusal to fully accept responsibility for her actions affect your perspective? Let's hear what you think. As always, you can get more involved by subscribing and discussing the cases in the comments. Thank you for watching, and join us in the next video so we can explore another story hidden within the wrinkles in crime.